What's up? Welcome back, guys. Episode 29 today, without Kristine. First one. But we finally have Cody McBroom on. We tried to make this happen for a while, I think. We had to move it a couple times, but we made it happen. What's up, Cody? How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Yeah, sorry for the for the delay of scheduling, but I'm excited to be here. I love both you guys, so I'm excited to be on the podcast. I'm honored to be requested, and yeah, things are crazy busy with me, so it's been a nightmare trying to schedule anything in my life, to be honest with you. But it's finally going to be coming to a calm very soon.
Cool, man. Yeah. I mean, we're also in like 3 different time zones. It's like 6 hours from me to Kristine, and then same for you guys, I think. So it's like impossible, but we're here.
Yep.
Cool. Got a bunch of different topics we like to talk about. I think we'll mostly talk about like general coaching, like you said, kind of where the industry is going, why nutrition should be tailored to the individual. I think that's a big one too. Reverse dieting, tracking macros, etc. Because I think we share a lot of the same kind of like values and like approaches, I think, and honestly, the full transparency, like I learned a lot from you. Like Cody and I work together in terms of coaching, also mentoring, same for Kristine. So I learned a lot from you. And first of all, by the way, thank you, because you are actually the person who told me just fucking, go to a gym and start public speaking, start the podcast. You kind of gave me that push to actually do that. And here we are,
Yeah. I love it, man. Yeah. I mean, I guess you're welcome, but it's, I think that at the end of the day, you got it in you, and it's, everybody kind of needs that, like that poke from somebody they respect to be like, dude, you got it. Come on, go. And I've had those mentors in my life too. And I actually didn't even like process the idea that like, I did coach and then mentor Kristine as well. And then through her, she connected us, you know what I mean? So it's actually really cool to be on the podcast just from that perspective as well. Because I don't do that with a ton of people. As you know, it's not like, that's not my business, but it's coaching is a passion of mine. So as the opportunity has arisen to help other coaches improve their business and grow themselves and dare I say, create their own version of a tailored life, like I'm happy to do it. It's an honor.
Awesome, man. So how's that been anyway with your new apparel brand?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. It's a different, it's shifting lanes. It's a different industry. It's cool because it's always been a passion of mine. I've always just been, and you and I have related on this on like non-coaching, non-fitness related aspects of life, but like fashion and tattoos and music and skateboard, like that whole culture has always just been so influential to me. It's always been a part of my life, especially growing up. I think it had a lot of influence just a lot of influence on me as far as like the independence of it. And I think that's what kind of nudged me to be an entrepreneur eventually, was just everything that I was embarking in was either very unique to me, like every tattoo on my body it will never be replicated. It's like a fingerprint, and I've been into that. And then music, I've never been somebody who plays music, but I'm very diverse with music. So I've gone to shows of like country artists, metal bands, punk bands, rap artists. Like I just love it all. Skateboarding is a very independent sport. So it's just been, part of all of that is fashion. Every single one of those lanes kind of has their own style and uniqueness to them. So that's something I've always gravitated towards. I've always been a very creative person. So before even fitness, that was actually what my intention was. My plan was to go to this school out here that ended up closing down, but it was an art institute. I thought I had to do that to become a fashion designer and then create a streetwear brand. And I fell into trying to lose weight and then getting obsessed with training, and like the rest is history. Now I'm here, but it's been cool to be like, now I can like fund that dream. I can like invest in that with somebody. And, speaking of somebody that just kind of pokes you to go forward with it, it's actually funny because I've always wanted to do it, but I wasn't in a place from a business perspective to do it on my own, because I had so much on my plate with Tailored Coaching Method. That's my baby. And like, that's been growing, and it's still technically an infant when it comes to business. We're 5 years in, that's small in the grand scheme of things. And so I was like, there's no way I'm starting another business outside of the fitness industry by myself. And it was my mentor, Andreas, who was like, man, I've been in business for decades now. He's he's probably got 20 years on me, I think. And so he was like, he hasn't got 20 years now. I think he's got like 10 years on me. But point being is he was like, you know what, I can fund that with you. I can run the business side. You do the creative side. Like, let's do it together. Like, let me help you with this because I want to be a part of it. And so we kind of came together to create it. And it's been interesting, man. You learned a lot. We did our first drop. I would say it was successful. We're not balling from it, but we sold everything that we wanted to sell, and we kept enough to give away some to some like influential figures that we want to send some care packages to, and learned a lot about the e-commerce side of it. It's different, like selling products and shipping and all that stuff online. It's just different than coaching or a service. So we learned a lot, and I think we're figuring out our lane of what we're going to build it into as it grows, and it's exciting.
For sure. I like that. I didn't know you also had someone kind of like pushing you to kind of do that thing, Oh
yeah.
I think we all kind of need that, like someone to kind of guide you to a point, or say, hey, just go for it kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
That goes from like mentors down to, I don't know, from their mentor to them, from them to the coach under them, whatever, to the client even, we all kind of need that nudge every now and then,
I think it is. I mean, it's accountability. I always say,
100%.
Pressure is a privilege, so I think that if somebody is applying pressure on you, or a responsibility is applying pressure on you, or the responsibility of maintaining the success you've created, that's a responsibility. If you've built something successful, if you've achieved your physical result that you're after, if you've lost the weight, if you've built muscle, whatever, that now is a responsibility just to maintain it. And that is a pressure, because now you have a pressure applied to you to continue doing the habits and the actions and taking the risks that were required to build your success or your body. So we can look at that pressure two ways, right? We can look at the pressure as accountability and a positive aspect that is applying pressure on you to continue growing and continue pushing and achieving more and doing more and maintaining the result. Or we can look at it as stress and anxiety and overwhelm, which a lot of people do. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a difficult thing to shift your perspective, but that's what it comes down to, And so, I have had a mentor I don't think I've ever not had a mentor, to be honest with you. I just don't, now I don't pay him because we became really close friends, and, we started a business together, but I still go to him for advice. He still pushes me to grow. And it's, I think we all need that without a doubt. Yeah,
for sure. And this is funny too, because like sometimes I get like a question. It's like, oh, what do you have a coach? Like, you're a coach, you know how to do it, like, I'm like, yeah, but I believe at least that also coaches need coaches. And I tell them too, like, the coach's coach probably has a coach or a mentor, and they have a mentor. So it's all like different levels, And speaking of like doing uncomfortable shit and just kind of like feeling a little like anxious about stuff, that was definitely me around public speaking. This, the podcast, talking into a camera and stuff. Like, at the end of the day, you just have to do that, like you just have to take that first step. And it's even almost like that person who they're like, I kind of want to get a coach, but I think it's probably just not for me, or I want to try this, I want to lose weight, but they're not taking that step, So it's cool that we can get someone else to kind of like give you that last little push,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it takes a long time to get to a place where you don't need a coach. I think that, and I think it's in different areas of your life too. So for me, like if I need to really dial in my nutrition and do a cut for a photo shoot or something like that, I'm still going to hire a coach, because that's just a level of accountability that you just need to get. And and it's an unbiased, unemotionally attached opinion and adjustment to your nutrition. I'm at a place with my training where I really don't need a coach as much, because there's so much intuition to it when you get to a certain place. I've been training for over 10 years, and I've been programming training for everybody from the like everyday person getting into it to people on TV as pro athletes. You know what I mean? So like, I've just had so much experience that I'm able to do that on my own. But when it comes to life, marriage, spirituality, business, I still have somebody that I seek to advice, and I'm reading books and listening to stuff constantly to get other opinions, because other people have done it for me, Yeah. But I think it's true what you said too, with like people struggle on the first step. And what I always tell people when I get the question, like, what's the best way to get consistent, or like, what's the key to consistency, or what's the key to taking action? and there's no hack. The key to consistency, as much of an oxymoron as it sounds, is consistency. There is no key. Like once you do it and keep doing it, it becomes easier and easier and easier. So consistency is just going through the hard part of doing it when it's not easy. And once you check off the boxes of like day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, it becomes habitual and you can do it more and more and more. And same thing with action. What's the easiest way to take action? There is no easy way.
You just got to do it
hard. You just got to do it. Because no matter what, when you like, it's like dipping your toes in the water. It's going to suck when you jump in, no matter if you dip your toes in first or you jump in. But once you do it and you're fine. So taking the first step is always difficult. There is no hack. There's no way around it. And until somebody takes action, no matter what they're trying to achieve, until they just take action on the front end, they're just going to be stuck there thinking about it and procrastinating and self-sabotaging in their head. You know what I mean? So I think winners in life in general, man, are just the people that are willing to either A, just say fuck it and just dive in and take action, or B, they're willing to listen to somebody tell them to buck up and get it done, and then they will take action. Because there's no ego attached to success. And if you could release the ego and just let somebody, like from me to you or for Andreas to me or whatever it is, say like, yo, like you just got to stop bitching and just do it. Just take action. And I know it sounds like kind of brutal, but like I tell this to middle-aged moms trying to lose 30 pounds too. And I'm like, hey, with all the love in the world, you just got to buck up and take action. Because what you really want and your happiest self is on the other side of that action, and on the other side of the result that you're after. But until you just buck up and take action, you admit that it's not always going to be easy. You're going to need discipline. You're going to need willpower. It's not going to be fun at times. You'll never get there. But once you're there, you'll love it. So I don't know. I think everybody kind of needs that tough love every once in a while, and
for sure. I think, don't you think we need a little bit more of that in the coaching space in general?
I do. I think that flexible dieting, for example, is one of those ones that has led to people becoming too flexible. The truth is like your best results live in the middle of structure and flexibility, or even like, dare I say, restrictiveness or rigidity. Because if you're too rigid or too structured or too regimented, like, of course, you're going to be following a meal plan that you cannot stand, that you hate, and you're going to fall off. Or by the time you get to your result, you're going to binge your way back to where you were. But if you're too flexible, you're relying on the guy behind the counter at Chipotle or whatever restaurant you're eating to like give you one serving, and you're going to like, come on, you're just guessing now, and guessing won't get you to a destination that you're after. So I think that like the reality is all the people that I see have the best results. They're in between. They know when to be flexible and how flexible to be. And then they know when to be structured and rigid and how structured and rigid to be. But there's too much of and I will say too, this comes with experience. I've noticed the less experience of coaches, the harder it is to honestly tell people, hey, this is going to suck at times. Hey, you're going to need discipline. Hey, you got to be more structured. Hey, you can't just eat whatever the fuck you want. It's not easy to tell people, because you want to tell them this is going to be easy. This is going to not have any stress. You're going to not even struggle with it. Like, it's going to be so seamless. Like, we all want to say that because we want to butter people up and make them feel good about it. But the reality is great results. It's not always a fun, easy, and stress-free journey, but it takes experience in coaching to be able to have the confidence in your voice when you deliver that message to somebody, and you do it in the right way where they accept it openly. But I agree. I do think there's a little too much hand-holding or like softness in the coaching space at times.
A lot of like cheerleading,
Mm-hmm.
No, but I agree though. And there is definitely something to be said about like repeating shit, whether it's foods or meals, or like, I like that approach of, hey, like, let's almost have a meal plan, but let's at least teach you like how to change stuff, or be very involved in creating that,
Mm-hmm.
I don't provide them either, but I have them kind of come up with like a perfect day of eating, show them how to make little changes, and then tell them, hey, in the cut, it's probably a good idea to at least repeat a couple meals, if not as many as possible, in my opinion,
Yeah, there's a few things here. Like, number one, there's a reason why meal plans work. Number one, there's zero guessing involved. You know exactly what you're eating, when you're eating it, how often you're eating it. And there's just like, you eliminate all guesswork. You're guaranteed to follow the plan. Number two, there's way less fluctuations and inconsistencies. There's no variety or variabilities that can be thrown in that change it. So again, I could make a a burrito bowl at home, or I could go get one at Chipotle. The burrito bowl at home I control. The burrito bowl at Chipotle I do not. It's dependent on the server of the day. So when we have a meal plan, no matter what is consistent in that meal plan, we have more control of the variabilities that allow us to have that precision we need to get to the result. So there's reasons why it works really well. And then obviously too, like people will, I think people stack habits. So for example, like I'm big on having a greens drink first thing in the morning. It's not because there's anything special about getting those nutrients in first thing in the morning, or like a greens drink is special. But when I start my day with that, it kind of programs me for healthy habits. So I think when you wake up and you have your meals prepped in containers, like you are actually already in that like zone, in that routine, and you're ready to go. Like you review your meal plan if it's not in Tupperwares, and maybe you cook as the day goes on, but you haven't written out. Like that's a habit that gets stacked upon throughout the day. And then I would also say that, there's obviously some science to it too, where there's some research that shows the more often you repeat a meal, the less likely you are to overeat. And they even do this with highly palatable foods. So one of the research studies was on mac and cheese. So they basically gave people mac and cheese once a week or every single day of the week. So it was like, but it was 5 times, or maybe it was like 8 times. It was very consistent, but it was like, okay, like for example, 8 days in a row or 8 weeks in a row, once a week. And every week, if they just did it once a week, they consistently overate because they could eat as much as they wanted to. And when you separate them by a week, you don't really get bored of it. 5 weeks in a row, 8 weeks in a row. It was one of the two. And then on the other one, when they had it every day, as the days went on, they actually started eating less and less because they got used to the food. So there is a palatability to foods where you actually get used to it, and then it's not as highly palatable anymore, which is similar to, if you're eating whole foods or if you're eating regular foods or meal plan foods. So what I always try to do, and what I think works best and what I've seen work best with our clients is a flexible meal plan, is what I call it. And the reason it's like that is because if I give you a meal plan and you don't know the numbers associated with it, you like numbers as in calories and macros, you actually don't know why that meal plan works, right? You're eating the food on the list. And especially if somebody isn't well-versed, like if I gave you a meal plan, you would know why it works because it's putting you in a calorie deficit. But the everyday person might not know that. They might go like, man, the oats, egg whites, and blueberries in my breakfast, those superfoods must be helping me lose fat. That's not the case. It's a calorie deficit. So if I go, okay, we're going to remove half a cup of oats, they're like, oh, is like oats bad? Is it the gluten? Is it the grains? Like why are we removing that? It's like, no, it's just pulling calories from you. So I would rather create a flexible meal plan where it's like, yes, here is like your ideal day of eating. Here's a meal plan structure that you can follow, you can repeat, you can eat every single day. It's ideal from a standpoint of it's easy to digest, whole foods that are going to help you hit your calories on a daily basis. And we're ensuring we're getting the right amounts and types of carbs around your workout, so on and so forth, right? But I'm going to show you how much protein, fat, and carbs are in each meal, why some might be higher than others, why you're eating X amount of meals per day, and what your daily total is, so that when you need a plan B because you can't follow the meal plan, or you have a trip, or you have work meetings, or you just don't feel like eating that breakfast anymore, you know how to switch it, you know how to adjust and go, I'm just going to eat 2 or 3 times today because I want a steak and some wine for dinner. Like, you know how to make those adjustments. And then when you go back to the plan, you can follow the meal plan. It makes life easy. You repeat it, you get the benefits of a meal plan, but you always can fall back on that flexible dieting. And I think that goes back to the fact that success for people's body composition lies between flexibility and rigidity. It's not either or, it's right in the middle.
Yeah. And it comes and goes in seasons too, like a maintenance, sure. Like you can wing it a little bit more. It's like easier to kind of stick to that within that range. But in a cut, like I don't want you to have a whole bunch of different meals, like changing it up all the time and like eating twice and then 6 times the next day. And like, binging one day and then like overly restricting like the next day. Like, no, let's keep it like as consistent as possible. And full transparency, like you literally told me, I think this was back in December, I also got a little too flexible and we didn't adjust anything. We just said, hey, let's dial it in. We dialed it in. Guess what happened? We continued to drop, Yep. So it's just
I've seen,
like we even need the reminder,
Yeah, 100%. I've seen that happen quite a bit with a lot of people where it's like, hey, before we adjust, just want you to tighten the reins a little bit. And obviously what like people listening, you might be thinking and what it does do is it could actually just make sure that you're in a deficit. And so maybe you weren't in a deficit. Maybe you were. Maybe the other thing to think about too is usually when people dial it in, they might actually improve their food quality as well When we improve our food quality, digestion might be better, energy might be better. We might actually have a higher thermic effect of food because unprocessed foods are going to have a higher thermic effect than processed foods, which just means, for those listening, the digestion, the calories burned through digestion absorption of unprocessed foods is a little bit greater, which is obvious. If it's processed, it's partially broken down, right? But I think it's so true, and it's so powerful of a slight just attitude shift or outlook on your diet that can make such a big difference. And then we don't have to pull calories. If we don't have to pull calories and we can move forward, I think we're going to be good. And like you said, at maintenance, you can definitely be more flexible because maintenance is not a dead set number. It's a moving target. And what that means is that every single day you're going to burn a slightly different amount of calories when you're at maintenance, because it depends how much you walk, sleep, stress, train, all that kind of stuff, right? But also too, your body is constantly trying to stay at maintenance. It's, trying to keep its homeostasis. So instead of it being like my maintenance is 2000, it's like 1800 to 2200, and it's kind of moving back and forth, right? Well, when you go into a cut, you got to get out of that maintenance range. So if your maintenance is quote unquote 2000 and you make 100 calorie deficit, good luck, because you're still in that range. You're probably not going to lose any weight. If you break out of that, now that number is more dialed in, more accurate, because your deficit isn't as much of a range because you got out of that range to go into that deficit. Therefore, when you get into a deficit, it's time to not only increase the intensity of training and of dieting and stuff in the deficit, but also to increase your intention and your focus and your precision, because make the most out of that diet period,
100%. Yeah, you want to make it count, you don't want to mess around and maybe be in a deficit, maybe not, try to cut 50 calories, 100. Excuse me. You want to make sure that it's going to be effective, when you go into a deficit. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also important to kind of dial things in before even getting there, getting to a cut, mm-hmm. Which kind of brings me to the next point, maybe reverse dieting. Do you think that is kind of one of the best ways to kind of prepare someone for a cut, dial things in, and when do you use it in your coaching?
Yeah, it's I don't know if I would say it's the best way to prepare somebody for a cut. I think it could be a tactic used in the preparation for a cut. We'll take people through primer phase, which is really just it's a fancy term for maintenance. You know what I mean? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But it's an easy way. It's a method. We go through a primer phase, a progressive phase, and a prosper phase. And when we have a method and we have 3 phases, it's just really it's a cool way of explaining and a very simple way to translate periodization to a client. So it's not just to try to create some edgy thing. It's just it's quite literally what we do. And it's hey, this is a way easier way to explain to them. But sometimes in going into that primer phase, we might need to reverse diet, but I think sometimes, more often than not, and again, this depends, who are we talking about here? Are we talking about Gym Pop? Are we talking about advanced client? You know what I mean? But I think that the reality is I'm either reverse dieting somebody out of a cut or out of a place of being super lean. And so it's not preparation for a cut. It's in fact to get them to a healthier place. And then once they get there, I'm hey, we're not going back into a cut because you were too lean, or you lost your menstrual cycle, or you were in an unhealthy place from a biofeedback perspective, or you've been trying to build muscle, but you're so afraid to get out of a deficit that you never build muscle. So we almost reverse diet them into maintenance or a surplus to finally start seeing gains in the gym. So the reverse diet on person A is usually the chronic dieter or the person who just dieted, maybe took it too far, or they got to their goal and now they're okay, I don't want to get fat, So, and this is where we get in a lot of debates with people. And I've been on podcasts with people kind of discussing this, but, science says, quote unquote, for those listening, I'm doing the air quotes. Science says a slow reverse diet is stupid. You shouldn't do that because now you're just prolonging those negative biofeedback markers, which is true to an extent. However, if we do go slow, mentally, it's 10 times easier on a lot of people. And I think that when people talk about science and they're saying well, the research shows this, and they're in their lab coat talking about research studies, I'm out here coaching real people. I'm telling them that this person struggles with the scale. This person mentally has an issue with body image and dieting and in chronic undereating. You cannot reverse them quickly because they're going to get to the same place no matter what. I know that.
Yeah.
But the only way that I can get them to consistently adhere and actually get to that place is if I take it slow. And so I think there's an aspect of like, what does science say? And then what does coaching application actually require? And then there's also the idea of like, okay, well, you know, even like after your cut, for example, we didn't see a ton, even after mine, honestly, when I just did my photo shoot not too long ago, there wasn't like such bad biofeedback markers like I need to be worried, or like blood work is messed up, or like with females, their menstrual cycle's gone. You know, for us, it was more like, I mean,
it's just
hungry.
time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm hungry. I'm maybe a little tired. I could probably train a little harder if I had food. Or if somebody's in a position of like bodybuilding, it's like, hey, the sooner we get into surplus, the sooner we can get to growing again, of course. But for some people, it's like, man, if you get to the end of the cut and you're lean and you're happy with your body composition and you don't feel like shit, let's take it slow so that we don't overshoot, because your new maintenance is lower than your old maintenance. We didn't have to take it so far that you feel deathly sick or anything like that. So let's inch it up slowly so that we don't overshoot your maintenance and then put on fat. Like that's the whole goal, right? So there's times and places where we do still use reverse dieting, but we understand that, you know, whether I take you 3 months to get there or 3 weeks, you're probably going to end up at the same place, the same maintenance, the same body fat levels. But because we don't know where that is, or because you psychologically struggle with the idea of gaining weight, we might have to go slower. And then there's, of course, the outliers, which it's hard to find this in research. But if we just look at research on thermodynamics, period, we'll see this. You know, some people are hyper responders, and it's not because like, oh, I just needed to eat more to burn more fat, I was in starvation mode or anything like that. It's like, no, you have a hyper responsive metabolism to where when I increase your carbs specifically, you just start moving like crazy. Your NEAT goes up, you're sleeping better, you're training harder, you're fidgeting more, and you have no idea what's going on because it's all subconscious. You're burning so many extra calories. It's the idea of energy flux, you know? And I would say this is 10% of people. It's not a very big amount of people that this happens to, but for some people it does. And, you know, those people usually struggle with gaining weight as well when it's time to gain. So there's like this whole category of reverse dieting. And then the other category is more of the gen pop, and it's almost like fake reverse dieting. And it sounds funny, but it's kind of like fake reverse dieting in the sense of you don't need to reverse diet your calories. You need to learn how to track accurately, because you tell me you're eating 1,200 calories and you want to lose weight and you have 40 pounds to lose. And I'm telling you, there's no way that you're only eating 1,200 calories, right? And if you are, it's because you're not training at all and your diet is predominantly fat. So maybe they're trying low carb. They're not very well versed on how to get enough protein in the diet, which is common. That's fine. If you're not a professional nutrition coach, I don't expect you to know everything, but maybe they're eating too much fats in their diet and they're not really training. So you're sedentary, you're eating a ton of fats, and because you're trying to go low carb or keto and you're not eating enough protein. And so you are low calorie, and maybe we do need to reverse your calories up by just increasing protein and adding some strength training in, or you're just inaccurately tracking. So we have these two different people, and the inaccurate tracker goes, I'm only eating 1,200 calories. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to bump you up to 2,000. And they're like, oh shit. And I'm like, don't worry. You're probably already eating this, or you're eating 1,500 all week and 3,000 on the weekends, but it's equating to the same number by the end of the week on average. So I'm going to hold you accountable of tracking on the weekends and staying within your caloric range or budget. And then also I'm going to make sure that you learn how to measure and track across the week properly, so that you avoid overeating throughout the week, and you avoid, like, you don't get in this place of not seeing any results or progress ever, you know? But both those scenarios, right? Like either one, I'm either preparing you for maintenance and health, or I'm preparing you for a diet. But I think the fake reverse dieting scenario is actually more common than people realize. There's a lot of people who just don't have the proper education on how to track and how to use macros. And so when we reverse diet them in preparation for a diet, we're not reversing them to improve their metabolism before we go into a deficit. I'm reverse dieting somebody in the kind of trick you reverse dieting way, but really I'm increasing your calories to what they actually are. I'm adjusting your macros within those calories to be more accurate for where they should be. And then I'm going to educate you on how to measure your food accurately so that you actually stay within those metrics and you know where you're at, which is going to lead to better results long-term.
Yeah. And that's actually what I meant in terms of like preparing, like not as much to like the metabolism side.
I figured,
but like exactly, you know, what you said, like getting them consistent. And it's almost as a coach, like you're like the magician, you know, like it's like I went from 1,200 calories and now I'm losing weight at 16. Yeah. Now you're actually consistent. And I literally said this in the last episode, I think, like that 1,200 calorie, we're trying to hit that and then binging every now and then. usually ends up being a lot more than like consistently hitting that 1600, you know?
Yeah. And look,
And
this happens to everybody too, like even me. So I'll give a good example of this. They might not have them over there, but man, there's these pretzels that I can't, like, they got to get out of my house. I'm not this way with things, but for whatever reason, these one pretzels just get me. But like right now, I've been maintaining my weight for a while now. And so I haven't been like too diligent about tracking. I know what I'm eating. I prep my meals. So like I'm within range, but then like I don't track on Saturdays and I don't track on Sundays either, but I'm more intentional than intuitive on Sundays. And then I just kind of sneak things in here and there and I manage them well. But like, I'm getting ready. It's, it's going to be spring here soon and I want to get ahead of the game, make sure I'm going to like, I basically did a cut and then I went to maintenance. I didn't go into a gaining phase. So I stayed relatively lean and I'm going to get a little peeled for summer. And so I'm like, okay, I need to accurately track my macros, and I literally had to add like 3 cups of these pretzels every day because they sit on my counter and I just kind of keep grabbing them. And then one day I was like, okay, I'm going to count the pretzels as I go. And I realized I was eating 3 servings of pretzels because they're these like crispy little pretzel thins with salt on it. And it's a great snack. I mean, it's like a low fat, great carb snack, but like, man, I can't stop. The point is like, I go, okay, I could have like set up my numbers and been like, all right, I'm going to set up my numbers right now. Or I could have waited a week, which I did. And I actually put all those pretzels in and everything I was eating. And I literally was eating 200 to 300 calories more than I thought. So I would have created a 600 calorie deficit instead of a 300 calorie deficit. You know what I mean? And then I would have been hungry, bad adherence. And so the point is if we don't have accuracy before the deficit begins, and that's part of this phase, then the deficit that we create is inaccurate. You can't create an accurate diet or deficit from an inaccurate maintenance of tracking, which is frustrating to people because they hire us and they go, all right, let's go. I want a diet. And we're like, okay, but first, yeah, exactly. But first, we're going to wait 1 to 2 weeks and we're going to get accurate. We're going to see where you're at. We're going to actually look at these things. And as much as it is frustrating to have to wait on something like fat loss because you are paying somebody to lose fat now, it's going to save you in the long run if we can get this information ahead of time.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, what's more important, like getting fast results and then like having a shitty experience, like risking not being able to stick to it, rebounding, whatever, or actually taking care of stuff first, getting ready to go into that cut, getting your stuff consistent, and then having like long-term stuff, like long-term results, like I think that's way more important.
Mm-hmm.
But that also plays into getting used to tracking. Like not everyone is used to tracking, not everyone wants to track, like some people are barely eating any protein or fruits and vegetables. Like that's not stuff you want to figure out like while you're in a cut,
Yeah. And I would say that's the other part of it, right? Is like, even for people who are more experienced, that initial priming phase, the phase of dieting you do before the diet is also to just get your habits straight. So for some people, it's like, hey, I want you to get used to weighing in every day and tracking or weighing in however many times. A lot of clients that we work with weigh in daily. Some it's like 3 times a week, whatever it is. When you get used to that, I want you to get used to checking in every week, used to communicating with me, used to eating the right amount of fruits and vegetables, drinking enough water, taking your fish oil, like dial in your habits, dial in your routine, and then let's do it. Because if you try to create new habits while also being in a deficit, it's going to be harder. There's no point in that.
Shit show.
Yeah.
That being said, in terms of tracking macros, because I've heard this one recently quite a bit, there is still a little bit of pushback there, where people are like, kind of, I want to try tracking, but I heard my friend didn't like it, or they couldn't stick to it, or it's so few calories, and I don't want to get like an eating disorder. What do you think about that pushback, and like, how would you go about that if someone comes to you and they're like, I want to lose fat, but I don't want to track?
Mm-hmm. So I think that like it's kind of like you got to pick your poison, If I looked at anybody and was like, hey, I want to be wealthy, I don't want to work though. Okay, well then
I don't want to track my finances.
Exactly. You're not going to get the result. So I think there's like, there's a few things here. Number one, you got to understand that like anybody who gets disordered eating from food, and I say disordered eating because that's different than an eating disorder. So when we talk about disordered eating, we're not necessarily talking about anorexia or bulimia or things like that, much of which does not stem from any type of diet source. It actually stems from body image and environmental aspects. So those around you, the way you're treated, the way you're raised, like things like that influence those things. And they usually start at a young age and manifest over time. Disordered eating is usually comes about from dieting. So from doing a bikini competition or doing crash diets and stuff like that. Now, disordered eating is going to be much more likely to happen depending on the personality type. So already, like whether you go any type of diet, tracking macros or paleo, keto, carnivore, intermittent fasting, whatever it may be, any type of diet you do, if you are the personality type that will go all or nothing, remove all friends and social aspects of your life and just like plunge forward into this one avenue, you are more likely to get to that point, right? And so I think there's an aspect of that like balancing act, and some people don't have those skills, or they have a personality type that they're more likely to fall into that position. And I can understand that. I definitely have a type A personality of all or nothing, and I will like work myself into a hole in certain areas of my life. And I've done it in fitness. I've done it with dieting. I did it with a competition to get on stage. I've done it with work. I've done it with a bunch of stuff. So I get it, but it's not macros per se. It's the attitude towards macros. Now you have to pick your poison as well, because you have to understand that if you want to lose weight, if you want to see successful fat loss, you have to create a deficit. There's just no way around it. It's science. It's the law of thermodynamics. So you can do so by tracking macros, or you can do so by following a meal plan and not straying away from that. You can do so by going paleo, which removes 3-4 categories of foods that you can't eat: grains, dairy, legumes, like alcohol, processed sugar. You just cut these things out, which creates a deficit and helps you lose weight, but it restricts you from eating those foods. You can do intermittent fasting, which removes partial of the time of day that you eat, which creates a deficit. You can do carnivore. Technically, you could lose weight carnivore. I wouldn't recommend it, but you cut out everything except meat. You can go keto, cut out everything that has carbs. So like all these things restrict something, which restricts calories. Macros is beautiful because it just restricts calories, which means it doesn't restrict anything else technically. Now, the people who typically fall into the rabbit hole of tracking macros causing them disordered eating are the people who combine these things together. They follow macros, but they do so by following a rigid meal plan and never stray away from it. They've tracked macros while also eliminating dairy and gluten because somebody told them it was bad for them, and that's what causes this tendency. So if you truly do flexible dieting, you know that number one, you don't have to eat your macros perfectly. You just got to be within range. Number two, there's no food that can't fit into your calories because everything has a caloric value. And number three, it's more about healthy principles than anything else. And it's just numbers that give you a lane to stay in, right? And it's not something for the rest of your life. Typically, it's something so that you can get to a place where you understand how to eat more intuitively. But fat loss doesn't happen intuitively, right? Maintenance can happen intuitively. So can weight gain, because intuitively, I want to eat Ben and Jerry's and drink beer every day. But intentional eating leads to fat loss. And it's very difficult to intentionally eat for fat loss. In other words, intentionally put yourself in a deficit without doing something to restrict. And if you restrict just numbers, it's way easier because you can choose. Do I restrict carbs? Do I restrict fat? Do I restrict both? Do I restrict a certain type of food because it doesn't make me feel good? Like it doesn't digest well and it helps me create a deficit? Awesome. But if you, per se, go with paleo, you will... I would say this is the case with paleo, keto, and even intermittent fasting. At first, it works really well. And the reason it works really well is because it creates a deficit. But it only creates a deficit so long as you don't know how to eat more food within what you're allowed to eat. And what I mean by that is if I go keto, for example, at first, I eliminate a bunch of carbs. I start losing weight because I don't really know how to eat keto. I'm trying to figure out what tastes good, what foods pair well. I'm just like trying to get some fat in. But eventually, I stumble upon like the Keto Bomb Babe or whatever the blogger is, that like has a list of recipes, and then I can eat the recipes and eat these keto brownies and keto bacon candy and all these different things. And now I put myself in a surplus. I'm like, why isn't this keto diet working anymore? Same thing with paleo, same thing with carnivore, same thing with intermittent fasting. At first it helps, but then eventually I just realized that I'm just going to stack more food at night because my hunger signals are telling me to. And if I think that it's just the fact that I'm not eating breakfast and that time restricted feeding and that's what's causing the fat loss, not the calorie deficit, I'm shooting myself in the foot, because eventually your hunger response will lead to you eating more of the food that you are allowed to eat, taking you out of the deficit and then not allowing you to lose weight. Whereas with macros, I just track it and I see on my app and it says, oh no, I'm not in a deficit anymore. I better remove that. Boom, I'm in a deficit. I can keep winning, right? So at the end of the day, like I think to me, it's like, it's more about the personality, and any of those types of dieting can lead to disordered eating. It's why you need balance. That's why you need flexibility. Actually, it's because you can't be dieting 24/7. You need times where you're not, for the psychological aspects of it. And you have to really just understand the science. And we try to just educate our clients on that. Like, hey, look, like, is macro counting tedious? Is measuring your food kind of annoying at times? Yeah. But how bad do you want to lose fat? Because placing something on a scale and weighing it every once in a while and then adding it into an app, mind you, just for the next 3 to 4 months of your life to just get to this result, right? Like, you don't have to do this forever. And eventually you'll learn exactly what a 4-ounce chicken breast looks like. And if it's a little bit over, a little bit under, because you're eyeballing it, it's not the end of the world. It's chicken, big deal. But at first you got to weigh it to be able to eyeball it. And I think having that conversation on the front end of like, hey, you said it earlier, right? Like just take it seriously because it's a small period of time. Like really just go all in on the diet right now, because if you just take it seriously, you build discipline, you focus, and you just really get into like, how does this system work? You will get results way faster, and then you could stop doing it way sooner. You know, like, but if you half-ass it, you're going to be dieting for 6 months, spinning your wheels to finally get to the result, instead of dieting for 3 months with a lot of intention and focus to just be done with it and move on to maintenance where you can be more intuitive.
For sure. I think that's exactly how we approach it too. And it's like, let's use it and then move away from it when it's okay, or when we can at maintenance, but not in that deficit, you know, like following like your natural hunger cues, you know, intuitive eating, whatever. Like that's exactly why people gain the weight, you know, like, so it's probably not going to work for fat loss. And if it does, like, it's going to be really fucking difficult because you're going to be purposely feeling very hungry, which I don't know how intuitive like eating that kind of is, because I don't know. I'm not too versed there anyway, but like I get the idea. It's a good idea. You know, it's kind of like, you know, what we're supposed to be doing, following your natural hunger cues and stuff. But at the end of the day, that's what's causing the issues for most.
100%. Well, and I think that's where like, so intuitive eating was originally created as a structured approach to maintain your weight. The problem is that eventually people who like, look at any influencer who is really lean and promotes intuitive eating. They're either genetically gifted or they were rigidly dieting for like bodybuilding shows and physique competitions for a long period of time. And now they eat intuitively because they're already lean. They don't need to lose weight. They're not trying to build more muscle. They're just trying to stay where they're at. And that's better for them. And then they're telling people, hey, you can eat intuitively too. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. They didn't diet for a decade straight, learning how to eat intuitively and what's good and what's bad and what macros are and what aren't. Right. It's the same. I see it in the training space too. I see a lot of coaches that are like, don't do high volume programming because it stresses you out and you can gain with low volume. And I'm looking at them. I'm like, you've been training for like a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. You just don't need it anymore. One, because you have the skill of lifting heavy and firing your muscles on a different level, neurologically speaking, than the beginner does. And 2, you've already built the muscle. You're not even trying to gain muscle anymore. You're just trying to maintain. And now if you do high volume, not only will you not gain muscle because you reach your potential already, you'll also stress your body out because you've been doing it for so long and you're older now. Like, don't tell that to somebody who's in their 20s or 30s who's never trained before. Like, they do need to progressively increase volume. That's what research shows, you know? So like, I think you have to take anybody who is very experienced in dieting or training as an influencer or coach. If they're making like blanket statements in black and white terms of like, you need to do this, they're full of shit. And I tell people that all the time. I'm like, 1, there's never one way to do it. 2, they're speaking from where they're at now, not from where they were when they were in your position. And that's a big red flag. You know, we speak from where I was when I was trying to lose weight. You know, what it took me to lose 50 pounds and then finally get in shape. And then what it took me to sustain that after I lost it. And where's the person that is coming to us that's only been at it for a year or 2? Like, what do they need to do? It's much different than what I need to do today, you know? So I think that, yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about that one, but I agree. I think in general, it's like, there's a million ways to skin a cat, and there's never one thing that is or isn't the best, you know? It's always a mixed bag. And I think everybody needs to approach this in a different way. And there's no one diet that creates disorders. There's no one training program that will cause burnout. And there's not one training program that will cause the best success. And there's not one diet plan that will create the best success. You know, we all need a combination of these things.
Yeah. It needs to be tailored.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, to add to that, like I have a client I can think of right now who has an autoimmune related thyroid dysfunction. So for her, we actually do need to implement some elements of paleo and some elements of this elimination style diet, because she has an autoimmune related issue that will not allow her to be successful or feel good or have functioning thyroid levels with certain foods. However, if I just stick to that, she won't lose weight, and she has a goal of losing weight. So guess what? I got to use that, and I got to use macros, because the macros and the calories allow me to create the numbers to lead to that success. The foods might help me with her thyroid health, right? Because of the autoimmune related Hashimoto she has. So it's like, again, we combine things.
Yeah. Yeah, it is important to like individualize stuff to the actual, like to the person, because like you said, there's not like one way to do things. And I mean, especially these days, there's so many conditions that just keep popping up. Like IBS is a big one. I have multiple people with that now, and kind of diving deeper into that as well. But it's like these people, they try to figure the shit out, and then they get these blanket like recommendations. Oh, just do low FODMAP.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that's it. You know, there's no, okay, use this for a period of time, try to reintroduce foods. It's just like, okay, do this.
Yeah. Yep.
And then they're still stuck with the same issues, you know? There's no education there. There's no like following up. Like, it's hard too, I guess. But yeah, dude, like so many people have like different shit going on, different goals, different stages. And you brought up a very good point. Like someone who's just getting started, because we also work with a lot of Gen Pop people. They will often go to Instagram and see like someone who's like super jacked and look at them and be like, okay, that's probably the training program I need to be doing. I want to look like that, so I got to do exactly what he is doing. Mm-hmm. Like, no, you probably shouldn't. Because that dude, like you said, has been at it for like years and years probably, you know? And then it's like, oh, try my 6-week, you know, 6-pack blaster or whatever. It's like, no.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've told people that many times too, where they'll be like, how do I, and this sounds weird to say for me personally, but like I'm going for like a similar look, you know, to you, like what's the program? What should I do? Blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, just train for 12 years straight. Like I've missed maybe like 2 weeks in the last 12 years, literally, bro. Like I've been abnormally consistent, because it's just a part of my life. I love it. Like usually when I travel, I train. Like that's just how it is. But I say that, and then they're like, usually, I mean, that sounds like a dick response. Like, hey, just, you know, do it for 12 years. But like, I follow that up with, my point is just be consistent, man. What I'm doing right now isn't what I've always done. Like I have principles and methods that I've always abided by: progressive overload, sitting in like a higher end of like the volume range, but not going too high, definitely not going low, having a little bit of strength training to create that neurological adaptation, but mainly bodybuilding accessory work. I usually follow an upper lower split that allows me to have more frequency. And when I really want to ramp up volume, I usually add a 5th or a 6th day. So it ends up being a push pull legs, or like right now it's upper, lower, upper, lower, upper. So it's 3 upper days, 2 lower days. There's more upper body musculature. And I have no issues with saying I'd much rather train my upper body than my legs. I'll skip leg day. I don't give a shit. Like Same. I got 2 of them. 2 of them is enough. I don't need 3. But, you know, point being is like, look at the methods and the principles, and then you apply them in the doses necessary for you. Like that's all it comes down to, you know, like, and this is also why I don't post like my full workouts that often. I just show like, in like, if you ever watch my story, it'll show like bench press and chest support row in this rep range with this tempo or whatever, but I never say the sets. I sometimes don't even say the reps, because I don't want people to get tied to the weight, the reps, or the sets, because the volume and intensity I'm doing is completely individual to me. The exercise, or even like the movement pattern, push, pull, like that's the necessary thing. Now, you might not feel good doing a chest support row. Like it's just not a good movement for you. It's a great one for me. Cool. Do a seated cable row if that feels better. Like there's certain principles, you know, same thing with, we actually I'm going to share it probably today on Instagram, but like I did a reel about just dumb exercises for hypertrophy. Like there's a time where I do something like a single arm, like no back support, just like seated press, or like a bridge press, so like shoulders on a bench, hip thrust up, and then like alternating. These are not good hypertrophy exercises. I'm working on like thoracic stability right now. And then like, I'm not really caring about like, yeah, like we get your shoulders a little bit, but I'm more focused on your positioning and posture, because you got some mobility or some stability issues. Same thing with like the bridge with that. Like I'm more focused on trunk stiffness while locomotion, which is anti-rotation. But if somebody uses that for hypertrophy, it's stupid because now I'm like trying to balance and focus on all these things. Like, no, like get a back support, stabilize yourself so you don't got to use your core, you don't got to use your legs, nothing, and just overload your shoulders. You want to build your shoulders, that's how you do it. So like, but if you look on Instagram, there's all these people doing like tall kneeling, like holding a kettlebell here, pressing here. There's a band point, like they do all this stuff. And it's like, that shit ain't good for hypertrophy. That's not going to build your body. Do a plank at the end of your session. You'll get the core activation that you need. You know, you don't got to do all this fancy stuff, but that's Instagram, you know? So you got to be careful. Like people got to be really careful watching that stuff. And that's why I think it's important. Although it's not the sexiest stuff to share, like it's important for me that I like constantly post like very transparent, authentic, like real evidence-based information so people can just get shit that is actually going to help them, you know, and reach their goals. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. This almost ties back to what you said earlier, where it's kind of like in the middle, you know, it's usually not something very extreme. It's like the basic stuff that goes even for nutrition too. It's like, you know, the ketos and those kind of things, like that's kind of cool to post about, you know, but no one wants to hear that you just should eat fucking vegetables every now and then, drink some water, go to bed on time. You're like, that's the shit. Like that's what we talk about, but like, that's not the most exciting stuff, you know? And that's the same for training.
Yeah, dude, it's so important though. That's why, like, I love when, like, if I write a post and it does really well and I get a bunch of people sharing it and it talks, I love it because, like I posted one the other day. It was like, people who stay lean year round do the simple shit year round. And a ton of people shared it. And it's a lot of trainers and coaches and stuff, which I love because then it's like them reminding everyday people. Because, you know, there's so many everyday people that follow fitness influencers or different coaches and stuff. So if we have people posting that kind of stuff, which I try to do every once in a while, and it's literally just like walk, sleep, eat relatively clean, and lift weights, and just do it for the next few years, you look fucking amazing. Half of coaching is that and accountability, right? Like, really, realistically, of course, there's advanced situations or there's people who are in like more extreme goals, trying to get shredded, all that stuff. I know for us, like our whole thing has always been, we help average people get above average physiques. So it's like, how do we help the everyday person down the street just learn how to get lean and stay lean, but also like he's a dad or she's a mom and a teacher and like whatever it may be. Like I'm a dad and I'm a business owner and I love dropping my daughter off at school or going to her ballet practice or whatever it may be and just being like the most jacked dude in the lobby of the ballet thing. And I see all these like chubby dads, and that's nothing against them, but like I feel good about myself. My daughter looks at me like superhero. It's like, that's my dad. And that's what I always want to envision, you know, for myself. And for us, like that's the mission, is like, how do we help more average people be above average? Ordinary people become extraordinary, right? Because like, I'm not impressed by somebody who can train a pro athlete. I've trained pro athletes. They're freaks, first of all. They're genetic freaks. They're extremely gifted and committed, and they will do anything I say. It doesn't require much like coaching skill. I've trained pro athletes in like actual sport. I've trained plenty of WWE wrestlers, right? Some amateur UFC people, physique athletes. I've trained a couple actors, some of which like lower level. I'm not talking like I haven't trained Brad Pitt and shit like that, but like lower level actors who are in like sitcoms and stuff as like side roles and stuff, which is still really cool because they're like, I have to be shredded. Like one guy literally had to be shredded for a role. It's like the easiest thing. I'm like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. He's like, I'll do it, whatever, because my job depends on it. It's like, okay, let's get after it, you know? So
just follow along. Yeah,
exactly. So, but again, that doesn't take as much skill. You know, it does take science and you got to know your shit, but like the skill is when I can make an everyday person who has a normal life, normal stresses, busy schedule, kids, all that stuff. If I can get them to get pretty damn lean and stay that way, that's an impressive coach.
Yeah. And those are like, at least the people we work with as well. And I feel like that's the people who need it the most, you know?
100%.
And that's exactly where coaching comes, like, that's why it's important. Because you need that person to guide you, to hold you accountable, to objectively make decisions, and just figure shit out. Because it's not easy, you know?
Yeah.
It's not easy to be a busy parent and have 2 jobs and run around all day, and then also trying to like lose like 30 pounds or whatever, you know? It takes a figuring out.
Yeah, 100%. And we tell people that all the time too. It's like, hey, we're not saying it's easy. We're just saying it's possible and we can help you.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure. Cool. Dude, This was a great episode. I also want to be respectful of your time and see that we're getting close to the hour. So where can people find you? What do you have coming up? How's the app, by the way, real quick?
Yeah. The app is, man, that's been a crazy journey. We have an app. We removed the ability for people to sign up for it. So like, we're not accepting new members in it, but we did that primarily just so like people who are currently in it didn't lose progress or metrics. They can keep progressing their training using the plans, while we finish up the next app, which will be done this year. But it's just, it's the app world it's a wild place. The tech industry is confusing. It is, there's some snakes in the grass, so to speak. And unfortunately I got bit by a snake. And what I mean by that is I just got kind of screwed over by some, things didn't work out as I was told or as I intended, unfortunately. So we had to kind of like pull out of the project we were doing and then find new developers and to finish, which is what we're doing right now. So it's been a little bit of a headache, but I'm excited for it because it's such a cool project and it's going to make things just so much better for our current clients, our current members, the people who have been waiting, who want really good programming, but don't have the money to afford a coach or have already coached with us and they don't need a full blown one-on-one coach anymore, but they need to keep the habits. They need to keep the training, all those kind of things. We have so much in store for that app. So I'm excited about it. Hopefully mid-year this year. The total time it would take to actually finish the project is just a few months, like 10 to 12 weeks. But people don't realize that includes like a lot of like the app store acceptance and the pricing and the testing and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see. But I would say by summer at the latest. And then, of course, we got the new facility we've been building. So we're still in the old one right now, but we actually start moving this Saturday. So just in a few days, movers come, start moving the gym. And then a couple days after that, we move all the office stuff. So getting ready to get in there because construction's basically done. They're finalizing that over these next couple days.
Cool.
That's been a busy project as well, which is what has been part of what has been keeping me from being able to do these podcasts has just been so busy trying to get all that squared away. And then of course, just running the business and having a family, there's a lot of moving parts, but it's been a blast, man. So, and for anybody listening, you can find me and updates on all that kind of stuff and what I'm doing. I try to share as much as possible so people can learn from it as well. At Cody McBroom on Instagram. I try to post every day, get on my story every day. The Tailored Life podcast is the podcast that we run, which is, we've been doing 2 times a week. We're on like 800 and something episodes. And we're going to actually bump that up. In the new studio, we'll be doing 3 or 4 a week, shorter podcasts, like 30 to 40 minutes, but cranking out quite a bit. And then the website, tailoredcoachingmethod.com, tons of free blogs, guides, all that kind of stuff. So we pump out a lot of free content just to help people as much as we can before they feel the need to hire somebody. But that's where you can find all that stuff.
Awesome, man. I'll make sure to drop that down below. Thanks for your time. Let's do this again with Kristine, if we can make it happen one day.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, we'll do it again with her and I'll be in the new studio next time, which will be exciting. So I'll be eager to jump on as many podcasts as I can.
Let's do it. Sounds good. Hi, man. To the listener, thank you once again. Make sure to drop us a 5-star, follow Cody, and I will talk to you next week with Kristine again. See you then.